I'm Ted, and honored to be a part of Final Exit Network. And the last couple of years, I've trained as an exit guide, which Faye has perfectly described. We are continuing that work 20 years later, and with some evolution of the details of the process. So I thought what I would do would be to give you some of those details on the slides. And while I show the slides, I'm going to give a first-person account of a client, a patient, a suffering person who is seeking information about how to do it yourself. So suppose I push a button. Let's see. Okay, suppose I am a person, I am suffering intolerably, irremediably, and I have no prospect of improvement, and wish that I could hasten my death, shorten my suffering. I search the internet for means of self-deliverance. Maybe I go to a meeting presented by FEN speakers, Final Exit Network, FEN. I go to the website for FEN and leave a message asking for information. Within 24 hours, I will receive back a phone call from a volunteer coordinator. This is my first contact with the organization as a client, and the coordinator will then explain what I have to do. I will have to write a personal statement explaining why I wish to hasten my death, and I'll need to submit medical records documenting my medical condition, and expect to receive another phone call from an interviewer. When I get a call from the interviewer, this is another person, another guide who has been trained to do this interview. This takes about an hour, and I'll give more detailed personal history. I will tell about my family support or not lack of it, explain what my conditions are. I will have to give enough description of what I can do physically so that the interviewer is convinced I have the physical ability to do the inert gas method, which is basically the only one we do right now. There are details, other possibilities in the wings. And also if my living situation will be safe for the guides to be able to come and visit discreetly. Even though what the guides do is legal, it's not encouraged or popular or culturally accepted. So it's when the coordinator collects my personal statement and my medical records and the write-up of the interview, then the medical evaluation committee receives all this information, all these details. There's a committee actually of 6 doctors, but for any particular case, like in the case of the client I'm describing, it'll go to a panel of 3 doctors. And if all 3 doctors approve based on specific criteria, medical, and general criteria, which are more quality of life, then I will get an assignment for a guide to do home visits. And the home visits is really the core thing of the program. Once we get to that point, there's a relationship between myself and the guides and the organization that's extremely unusual. It's an intimate relationship, and those of you who have been with patients dying know it's a remarkable, compelling experience. The gratitude these people, the clients feel, the patients. So, yes, moving along. So There will be 2 guides assigned ultimately. The senior guide will make me a phone call, corroborate the application, and basically have a conversation, making sure that I understand what FEN can do and that FEN understands what I can do, what the family support might be, how difficult it might be with obstructive family members or a difficult family living situation, and so forth. And the guide will explain on the phone what the process is, how it works. There's a 2-guide, 2-visit model. And as a client, as a patient, I need to understand, I need to not have unreasonable expectations. That sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. And there are, occasionally you get a client who really expects too much and cannot be offered services for one reason or another. Finally, we have a first home visit in which the guides will come. Oh, before the first home visit, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, one of the key things that the guide does on the phone call, once the guide tells me or decides that I can proceed, is they will tell me I'll get a mailing in the US mail, not an email, not a reference in the cloud, a piece of paper that has a list of all the materials I will need to put together in order to hasten my death, using what we use now is the inert gas method. So once I get all these materials in hand, I've ordered them or I bought them, gone to the hardware store, I'll call the guide and say, we're ready, we'll schedule a visit. The associate guide will call me and we'll have a conversation, so we'll have met once. And during the initial visit, which is about a 2-hour event, takes quite a while. The guides sit around. If I have family members there, they will all be introduced. Each person will get a chance to go around and check in, see how comfortable they are with the decision for me to hasten my death. And there'll be a kind of a meeting of the minds, but this is the in-person intimacy is then developed, and the relationship then becomes quite real as we sit in the room together talking about my death. To walk into the home of a stranger and say, tell me, why did you ask me to come to your home? I came because I want to hasten my death, and I think you can help me figure it out. Then I'll put together the equipment. It's a kit of stuff. There may be 8 or 10 items. They have to be assembled. Maybe a wrench is needed, et cetera, et cetera. I'll make a plastic bag with a headband and to tighten around the neck, so it's just perfect. A statement of intent has to be signed saying, this is what I'm choosing, nobody is encouraging me, and the guides will keep this, so go stay with the organization. Finally, 2? Thank you. Then we will do a rehearsal in which every step that I have to do in order to die will be instructed by the guide. So I will know exactly what's going to happen. This is just the rehearsal, but I will know what happens when they come back for the exit visit. Again, I sign the consent form. The guides come back typically after 2 weeks. I'll sign the consent form again. And this is maybe a very short visit, maybe 30 or 40 minutes. The guides are in the house and then they leave. Plans were made earlier for disposition of, well, for the discovery of my body and for disposition of my remains. So that's the process, that's how it works, and it's a do-it-yourself model, and we like it. And so Final Exit does not get involved in legislation efforts. Most of our members are, in fact, of course, do support. all the other organizations that are working on changing the laws. But we have some other activities. We coordinate with new tech, as Faye was talking about. The methods that we use now may need updates or changes. We're trialing new methods. We're doing now a trial on sodium nitrite, which is an ingested inorganic salt, which may be a very effective peaceful pill. We'll see. There's also local international events. We had a conference outside in Nevada last winter. We have a speakers bureau that will come and give local talks, and we have an online presence. So that's who we are and what we do, and thank you for listening.